My dad handed the company I built to my lazy brother. "You're just a worker," he said. He thought I would stay and run things for him. He forgot I never signed a non-compete. There is a sound that every general contractor knows. It's a sound you feel in your teeth before you hear it with your ears. It's the sound of a load-bearing beam cracking under weight it wasn't designed to hold. It's a sharp, sickening pop, like a gunshot wrapped in velvet, that echoes through the framing of a house. When you hear that sound, you don't think. You don't hold a meeting. You don't consult a brand strategist. You move. You scream, "Clear the deck," and you get every living soul out of the structure because you know that physics doesn't care about your schedule. You know the roof is coming down. I heard that sound in my family about 9 months before the actual collapse. But unlike on a job site, I didn't try to shore up the walls. I didn't call for emergency bracing. I grabbed my hard hat, walked out the front door, and let the whole damn thing come down on top of them. My name is Thomas Sterling. I'm 42 years old, and for 15 years, I was the vice president of operations for Sterling and Sons Construction. Notice the name, Sterling and Sons, plural. That second son is my younger brother, Ryan Sterling. And Ryan is the reason I am currently sitting in the corner office of my own company, Ironwood Builders, watching my father's 40-year legacy being auctioned off for pennies on the dollar in a gravel parking lot across town. To understand why I destroyed my family's business, why I cannibalized the very thing I spent my youth building, you have to understand the dynamic of the Sterling household. You have to understand the difference between the guy who pours the concrete and the guy who cuts the ribbon. My father, Robert Sterling, was a hard man. He started the company in the early 80s with a rusted Ford pickup truck, a hammer, and a bad attitude. He believed in sweat equity. He believed that if you weren't bleeding by 5 p.m., you hadn't actually worked. I was the oldest. I was the mule. From the time I was 12 years old, my summers weren't spent at baseball camp or playing video games. They were spent hauling 70-pound bundles of asphalt shingles up extension ladders in 90-degree heat. I remember my 16th birthday vividly. Most kids get a car or maybe a nice watch. I got a new tool belt, heavy leather, professional grade, and a lecture on the proper way to frame a window header. "You have to know the business from the dirt up, Thomas," Dad told me, wiping drywall dust off his forehead with a rag. "You have to know how to sweat. When you take over one day, no one can say you didn't earn it. The men have to respect you, and men only respect pain. When you take over." That was the carrot. That was the promise dangling on the stick that kept me marching for 20 years. That phrase, "when you take over," was the reason I went to engineering school at night while working 60-hour weeks. It was the reason I missed my best friend's bachelor party because a water main burst on the job site at 3 a.m. It was the reason I never asked for a raise, never complained about the unpaid overtime, never looked at other job offers. I was investing in my inheritance, or so I thought. Then there was Ryan. Ryan was 5 years younger. Ryan was different. Ryan had asthma whenever it was time to unload a lumber delivery. Ryan had sensitive skin that couldn't handle fiberglass insulation. Ryan was charming. Ryan had a smile that could talk a cop out of a speeding ticket. While I was in the crawl space fighting off spiders and fixing plumbing leaks, Ryan was inside the air-conditioned site trailer, drinking lemonade with the clients, making them laugh, talking about curb appeal. Dad had a blind spot for Ryan the size of Texas. "He's not built for the labor, Thomas," Dad would say, watching Ryan charm a wealthy homeowner. "He's got a head for business. He's a visionary. You're the hands. He's the face. It takes both." I accepted that. I thought it meant we would be partners. I would build the buildings, he would sell them. I was fine with that. But as we got older, the dynamic shifted. Ryan went to business school on the company dime. Dad paid for a private university, a luxury apartment, and a leased BMW for him. Ryan graduated with a C average and a wardrobe full of custom suits. When he joined the company officially at 23, Dad made him vice president of marketing. I was managing 3 crews, handling payroll, bidding on multimillion-dollar commercial contracts, and dealing with OSHA inspectors. Ryan was rebranding. I remember the drone incident of 2019. It perfectly encapsulates Ryan's contribution to the company. Ryan decided that Sterling and Sons needed cinematic storytelling for our Instagram page. He bought a $5,000 professional drone with the company credit card without asking me. We were in the middle of a critical foundation pour for a high-rise downtown. It was a high-stress day. We had 20 cement trucks lined up around the block. The clock was ticking because concrete waits for no one. I was down in the pit, knee-deep in mud, yelling at the pump operator to adjust the pressure. Suddenly, there's this buzzing sound like a giant angry hornet. I looked up. Ryan is standing on the edge of the excavation pit, wearing a pristine white hard hat that he probably bought just for the outfit, and pilot sunglasses. He's flying this massive drone 10 feet over my head, dipping it dangerously close to the rebar. "Ryan," I screamed, "get that thing out of here. It's a safety hazard." "Chill, Thomas," he yelled back, not looking up from his controller. "I need the dynamic angle. The lighting is perfect." He tried to do a swooping maneuver. He miscalculated the wind shear coming off the building next door. The drone slammed into a steel column, bounced off, and plummeted straight down, directly into the wet concrete of the main footing. Fuck! $5,000 of technology swallowed by the gray sludge. I had to stop the pour. I had to fish it out with a rake, ruining the finish of that section. It was coated in concrete, dead as a doornail. I climbed out of the pit, covered in mud, holding the dripping drone. "You idiot," I yelled, shaking the drone at him. "You could have hit one of the guys. We have to refloat that entire section now." "God, Thomas," he sighed, checking his hair in his phone reflection. "It's a tax write-off. Besides, the footage would have been epic. You need to relax. You have no artistic vision. That's why you're the operations guy." Dad sided with him, of course. "He's trying to modernize us, Thomas. Don't be so rigid. Accidents happen." That was the pattern. Ryan broke things, I fixed them. Ryan spent money, I earned it. There was another incident about 6 months later that should have been the final warning sign. We were framing a custom home in the hills. Ryan, trying to optimize costs, had secretly switched our lumber supplier without telling me. He found a guy in Jersey who was 10% cheaper. The wood arrived. It was grade B lumber. Nutted, warped, wet. You can't frame $1 million home with warped wood. The drywall won't sit flat. The doors won't close. I called Ryan. "Send it back." "We can't," he said. "I signed a non-refundable contract to get the discount." I had to spend 3 days sorting through the pile, discarding 40% of the wood, and then buying emergency replacements at retail price from Home Depot. It cost us double what the original supplier would have cost. When I showed Dad the spreadsheet, he shrugged. "Ryan is learning, Thomas. Tuition costs money." By the time I was 35, Dad had mostly checked out. He was semi-retired, which meant he showed up at 10 a.m., drank coffee, complained about the government, and left at 2 p.m. to play golf. I was running the company. I was a de facto CEO. I was the one the bank called. I was the one the suppliers trusted. I tolerated Ryan's 6-figure salary, which was infuriatingly $10,000 higher than mine, because I knew the end game. I knew Dad was officially retiring when he turned 65. I knew the plan. I would become CEO, and I would finally have the authority to rein Ryan in. Then came the false hope meeting. This happened 1 week before the retirement dinner. Dad called me into his office. He poured 2 glasses of scotch. He looked serious. "Thomas," he said, swirling the glass, "I'm stepping down next week. You know that." "I know, Dad." "I want to know where you see this company going," he said. "If you were in charge, fully in charge, what would you do in the first 100 days?" I took the bait. I laid it all out. I told him about my plan to expand into medical facility renovation. I told him about upgrading our project management software. I told him about restructuring the debt to free up cash flow. Dad nodded, taking notes. He looked impressed. "That's good thinking, son. Very solid. Very operational." I left that meeting walking on air. I thought I had just passed the final interview. I didn't realize I was just giving him the blueprint he would hand to Ryan. Then came the retirement dinner. It was last May. Dad rented out the private room at the Chop House, the nicest steakhouse in the city. He invited everyone. The key foremen were there: Mike Donnelly, my lead site supervisor, Sal, the master carpenter, and Big Dave, the heavy equipment operator. Our biggest suppliers were there. Arthur Henderson, our banker from Chase, was there, and the whole family. My mother, Helen Sterling, was beaming. She was wearing her best pearls and a dress she bought just for the occasion. I walked in feeling good. Better than good. I felt validated. I had just closed the biggest deal in company history that week, a $4 million contract to renovate the city medical center. It was a complex job with strict regulatory requirements, and I had spent 3 months designing the proposal. The company was profitable. We were debt-free. I had built this. We ate steaks. We drank expensive Cabernet. The mood was celebratory. Then, Dad stood up to give his speech. He tapped his wine glass with a spoon. Clink, clink, clink. The room went quiet. I started this company 40 years ago, Dad began, looking misty-eyed. He put a hand on the back of his chair to steady himself. I built it with a pickup truck and a dream. I missed dinners. I missed ball games. I gave my life to this business. He looked at me. I straightened my tie. I sat up a little straighter. I was ready. I had my acceptance speech written in my head. I was going to thank the crew first. I was going to talk about honoring the legacy while embracing new technology. But a man knows when it's time to pass the torch, Dad said. A man knows when the next generation needs to take the wheel. He paused for dramatic effect. He looked around the room, smiling. I am proud to announce, Dad said, his voice booming, that as of the first of the month, I am officially stepping down, and the new chief executive officer of Sterling and Sons will be. He swept his hand across the table. My son, Ryan Sterling. The silence that followed wasn't the silence of respect. It was the silence of car crash. It was the silence of 50 people simultaneously realizing something terrible had just happened. The foreman next to me, Mike Donnelly, a guy I'd worked with for 10 years, a guy who had taught me how to weld, dropped his fork. It clattered loudly against his china plate. I felt like I had been shot in the chest. I physically couldn't breathe. The room narrowed down to a tunnel. I looked at Dad. He was beaming at Ryan. Ryan stood up. He buttoned his suit jacket. He didn't look surprised. He looked smug. He looked like he had known for weeks. Ryan represents the new generation, Dad continued, completely oblivious to the shock in the room. He has the vision to take us into the 21st century. He understands branding. He understands the modern market. He is going to take Sterling and Sons global. And Thomas. The voice came from the back of the room. It was Arthur Henderson, our banker. He didn't look happy. He looked confused. What about Thomas? Dad laughed. A big, hearty, dismissive laugh. He walked over and clapped a heavy hand on my shoulder. I flinched. Oh, Thomas isn't going anywhere. Dad announced. Thomas is too valuable in the field. He's the engine room. We can't have our best builder stuck behind a desk pushing paper, can we? Thomas will remain vice president of operations. He'll make sure Ryan's vision gets built. He's the muscle behind the magic. The muscle behind the magic. I sat there frozen. The humiliation was absolute. It was visceral. I was the workhorse. Ryan was the show pony. And Dad had just announced to the entire industry, to my crew, to my banker, to my suppliers, that he trusted the pony to drive the carriage. Ryan gave a speech. It was full of buzzwords. Synergy, paradigm shifts, scalability, disruptive innovation. He didn't mention the crew. He didn't mention the clients. He didn't mention the hard work. He talked about expanding the brand ecosystem. I didn't hear most of it. I was listening to the blood rushing in my ears. After the dinner, while people were awkwardly shuffling out, Mike Donnelly squeezed my shoulder silently as he left, looking furious. I cornered Dad and Mom in the lobby. Is this a joke? I asked. My voice was shaking. I hated that it was shaking. Thomas, lower your voice. Mom hissed, clutching her purse. Don't make a scene. People are watching. You made Ryan CEO? I looked at Dad. He's never managed a job site in his life. He doesn't know how to bid. He doesn't know the building code. He crashed a drone into wet concrete. He has an MBA. Thomas, Dad said dismissively. He knows business. Construction is just the product. Business is business. I have an engineering degree and 15 years of experience running your business. I just closed the hospital deal. And you'll keep running the jobs, Dad said, his voice hardening. Thomas, listen to me. Look in the mirror. You are a worker. You are excellent at logistics. You are excellent at execution. But you don't have the polish. Ryan has the polish. Clients like him. He's the face. You're the hands. It's a perfect partnership. A partnership? I laughed bitterly. I report to him. That's not a partnership. That's servitude. He's your brother, Mom said. You should be happy for him. Why are you so jealous? It's ugly, Thomas. You've always been so competitive with him. I'm not jealous, I said. I'm insulted. I built this company, Dad. When you checked out 5 years ago to play golf, I kept it floating. And now you hand the keys to the kid who spends 3 hours a day on TikTok. It's done, Dad said. The papers are signed. Now, I expect you to support him. He's going to need your help during the transition. I want you to walk him through the bidding process for that hospital job on Monday. He needs to sign off on the contracts. You want me to train my boss? I want you to do your job, Dad snapped. And stop acting like a child. We're giving you a 5% raise. Be grateful. A 5% raise. To report to my little brother. I drove home that night in silence. I didn't turn on the radio. I sat in my driveway for an hour, staring at the steering wheel, listening to the engine tick as it cooled down. I thought about the 15 years. I thought about the missed birthdays. I thought about the stress, the ulcers, the sleepless nights worrying about payroll. And then, sitting there in the dark, I realized something. A realization that hit me like a beam of sunlight breaking through storm clouds. I didn't have a contract. Dad, in his arrogance, in his total assumption of my loyalty, had never asked me to sign a non-compete agreement. He assumed he didn't need to. I was a sterling. Where else would I go? He thought he owned me. The next morning, I walked into the office at 5 a.m. I wanted to be there before anyone else. I didn't turn on the main lights. I worked by the glow of the emergency exit signs. I went to my office. I packed a single box. My framed engineering degree. My photos of the projects I'd built. The library, the fire station, the bridge uptown. My Rolodex. The physical one with the personal cell phone numbers of every major subcontractor in the state. Then I sat at my computer. I didn't delete the company files. I wasn't a criminal, and I wasn't going to give them a reason to sue me. But I deleted my files, my personal templates, my spreadsheet formulas that automatically calculated material costs, my cheat sheets for the local building codes. I wiped my browser history. I logged out of my email. By 9 a.m., Ryan strolled in. He was wearing a new suit. He walked straight into the big corner office, Dad's old office, and started measuring the windows. Hey, Tom, he chirped, seeing me in the hallway. Good morning. Listen, I need you to move your truck. I want the CEO spot reserved for my Range Rover. Also, I'm thinking we need to redo the website. I want to put my photo on the landing page, maybe something black and white, very Steve Jobs. I looked at him. He looked like a child playing dress up. Sure, Ryan, I said. I'll move my truck. I walked into his office. I placed a single sheet of paper on the mahogany desk. What's this? He asked, distracted by a fabric swatch for new curtains. It's my resignation, I said, effective immediately. He laughed. Good one, Tom. Seriously, though, move the truck. I have a lunch meeting. I'm not joking, I said. I quit. Today is my last day. Actually, this minute is my last minute. He stopped laughing. He looked at the paper, then at me. You can't quit. Dad said you have to train me. He said you have to handle the hospital contract. Dad can train you, I said. He's the retired genius who built the company, right? And you're the visionary. Use your vision. But who's going to run the crews? Who's going to handle the inspections? The hospital bid paperwork is due Friday. Sounds like a CEO problem, I said. I walked out. As I was heading to the parking lot, my phone rang. It was Dad. Ryan says you walked out, Dad roared. Get your ass back in there. You are embarrassing this family. I'm just a worker, Dad, I said calmly. Workers are replaceable. You said Ryan has the vision. Let's see it. If you leave, you are dead to me, Dad threatened. I will cut you out of the will. You won't see a dime of the inheritance. Keep it, I said. You're going to need it to bail out Ryan. I hung up. I blocked his number. I didn't go home. I went straight to the bank. I took out my savings, my someday money I had been hoarding for a house renovation. It was about $200,000. Then I went to the state licensing board. I filed the paperwork for a new LLC. Ironwood Builders. The following Monday, I started making calls. The first call I made was to Mike Donnelly. I met him at Pete's Diner, the greasy spoon where we had eaten breakfast before job sites for a decade. Mike was already there, nursing a coffee. He looked miserable. How is it over there? I asked, sliding into the booth. It's a circus, Thomas, Mike said, shaking his head. Ryan showed up at the site yesterday, in loafers. Loafers? And it's not just the clothes. Ryan cut the safety budget. He told me we didn't need a flagger for the road crew because cones are enough and flaggers are expensive. I told him someone's going to get hit by a car. He told me to have a risk-tolerant mindset. Mike looked at me, dead serious. I was about to punch him. I can't work for him, Tom. He's going to get someone killed. Then don't, I said. I slid a piece of paper across the table. It was an offer letter. Ironwood Builders, Mike read. You started a shop? Just me right now, I said. But I can match your pay. I can give you 5% equity in the company. Health benefits start day one. And I promise you, you will never have to listen to a lecture about synergy or growth mindsets again. We build things right, or we don't build them. And we don't cut safety. Mike smiled, a real, genuine smile. He picked up a pen. Where do I sign? I called the other 3 foremen. They all jumped ship. Within 48 hours, Sterling and Sons had lost 80% of its skilled labor force. The trucks were there, sitting in the yard, but there was no one to drive them. Then I called the clients. The big whale was the City Medical Center. For $1 million. The contract wasn't signed yet. Ryan was supposed to sign it that Friday. I called Sarah Jenkins, the hospital administrator. Sarah, it's Tom Sterling. I need to see you. It's urgent. She agreed to see me. I walked in her office wearing my new Ironwood jacket. I'm no longer with Sterling and Sons. I told her. I've started my own firm. I know the bid is due Friday. I want to pitch you. Tom, she said, looking stressed. I like you. But Ryan Sterling was in here yesterday. He's the CEO now. He made a presentation. Let me guess, I said. He talked about aesthetic healing environments and showed you mood boards. She laughed nervously. Exactly. He brought paint swatches. I asked him about the medical gas plumbing specs, specifically the negative pressure requirements for the infectious disease wing. He looked at me like I was speaking Greek. He tried to Google it under the table. I pulled a thick binder out of my bag. Here are the specs for the med gas system. Here is the HVAC filtration plan to ensure you pass the state inspection. Here is the timeline that guarantees the ER stays open during construction. Sarah Jenkins looked at the binder. She looked at me. Can you really pull this off with a new company? She asked. I have Mike Donnelly running the site, I said. I have the crew. I have the knowledge. Sterling has the name, Sarah, but they don't have the hands. She signed a letter of intent right there. For 6 months, I worked harder than I had ever worked in my life. I was the CEO, the project manager, the estimator, and sometimes the janitor. I lived on caffeine and spite. But it worked. My reputation traveled with me. Ironwood Builders wasn't just a new company. It was the real company. Meanwhile, Sterling and Sons was bleeding out. Without me to manage the operations, the jobs they did manage to keep started to fall apart. Deadlines were missed. Inspections were failed. Ryan, desperate to fill the gap left by Mike Donnelly, hired a cheap, non-union subcontractor to replace the crew. They botched a foundation pour on a custom home. The concrete cracked because they didn't vibrate it properly. The homeowner sued. Ryan stopped posting on Instagram. Dad came out of retirement to try to save it. He called me 3 months in, using Mom's phone because I had blocked his. Thomas, this has gone far enough, he said. His voice sounded old. Ryan is overwhelmed. He needs help. Come back. We'll give you a 10% raise. We'll make you junior partner. Junior partner? I laughed into the phone. Dad, I own Ironwood Builders. We just did $2 million in revenue in our first quarter. I answered to no one. Why would I come back to be a junior partner at a sinking ship? Because it's your name on the door, he yelled. Sterling, that is your legacy. No, I said, that's your legacy. You chose it. You chose the polish over the work. Now you have to live with the polish. The end came faster than I expected. Ryan, desperate to bring in cash flow to cover the lawsuits and the bleeding overhead, did something incredibly stupid. He bid on a massive municipal bridge project. It was a $10 million job. To win it, Ryan underbid it by nearly $2 million. He didn't understand that the steel tariffs had tripled the price of I-beams. He didn't understand the environmental compliance costs for working over a protected river. He just saw the big number and thought, this will save us. He won the bid. It was a poison pill. The project was legally binding. They had to build it for the price they quoted. I ran the numbers on a napkin when I heard the news. I knew immediately. They're going to lose 20 cents on every dollar they spend. They ran out of cash 6 weeks into the job. The steel supplier demanded payment up front because Sterling's credit rating had tanked. Ryan didn't have the cash. The bank froze their line of credit. The bonding company stepped in. 2 months ago, Sterling and Sons filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. It quickly converted to Chapter 7, liquidation. Yesterday, the auction was held. It was held in the company yard, the yard I used to sweep when I was 12. It was raining, a cold, gray drizzle that turned the dirt into mud. Dad was there. He looked shrunk. He was sitting in a folding chair near the back of the tent, staring at the ground. Mom was holding his hand, looking pale and frightened. Ryan was nowhere to be found. I heard later from Mike that Ryan had taken a mental health trip to Cabo the day the bankruptcy was filed. I stood in the back. I wore my work boots and my Ironwood Builders jacket. I watched my old trucks I had maintained, trucks I had washed, get sold off one by one. Ford F-350 heavy duty, sold for $40,000. Caterpillar excavator, sold for $85,000. I bought 3 of them. I needed them for my new crew. It felt poetic. When the auction ended, the yard cleared out. I walked past my parents. I wasn't going to say anything. I just wanted to leave. But Mom saw me. She jumped up and ran over, her heels sinking into the mud. Thomas, she said, grabbing my arm. She looked desperate. Her eyes were red-rimmed. Thomas, please. Your father. He put everything into the company. His retirement. The house. It's all tied to the business loans. They personally guaranteed the bridge bond. I know, I said. I warned him. If the bank takes the rest, we lose the house, Thomas. We lose everything. She squeezed my arm. You have money, she whispered. We hear you're doing well. Mike says you're rich now. You could buy the building. You could buy the name. You could save us. Save you? I looked at her. Mom, 6 months ago you told me I was jealous and ugly for not wanting to serve Ryan. You told me to be grateful for a 5% raise. You stood there while Dad called me just a worker. We made a mistake, she cried. We know that now. Ryan wasn't ready. We were wrong. But don't punish us for it. We are parents. I'm not punishing you, I said. This is just business. The market decided. Ryan had the vision, remember? This is his vision. Thomas, please. We have nowhere to go. That stopped me. The house I grew up in. The house where I'd spent my childhood mowing the lawn and fixing the roof. The house where I slept in the attic bedroom and dreamed of running the company. I looked at Dad. He finally looked up at me. His eyes were glassy. He looked defeated. But even then, there was no apology in his eyes. Just expectation. He still expected me to be the mule. He expected me to fix what Ryan broke, just like I fix a drone. I won't bail you out, I said. Mom gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. But I continued. I will make you an offer on the house. You want to buy our house? I'll buy it for market value, I said. That should be enough to pay off the immediate bank liens and leave you with a little bit to rent a condo. But you have to move out. I'm not renting it back to you. Why? Dad asked, finding his voice. Why do you want the house? You have a penthouse downtown. I'm going to bulldoze it, I said calmly. Bulldoze it, Dad sputtered, standing up. You can't do that. That's our home. I built that deck. The lot is zoned for multifamily now, I said. I checked the maps. I'm going to subdivide the land. I'm going to build 4 starter homes on the property. It's a good investment. Ironwood Builders needs a winter project. You're hateful, Dad spat. You're doing this out of spite. You're trying to erase us. No, Dad, I said. I'm doing it because it's a smart business move. Isn't that what you taught me? Emotion has no place in business. You picked the CEO based on emotion because Ryan was your favorite. I'm making a decision based on numbers. And the numbers say your house is worth more as dirt. I walked away. I bought the house yesterday. They accepted the offer because they had no choice. The bank was days away from foreclosure. They are moving into a 2-bedroom apartment near the highway next week. Ryan is moving in with them. He's between opportunities, and his BMW was repossessed. I drove by the site this morning. It stopped raining. The sun was out. My crew, the crew that used to be Dad's crew, was there unloading the excavators. The same excavators I bought at the auction. Mike Donnelly walked over my truck. He looked at the house. He looked at me. Ready to tear it down, boss? He asked. I looked at the house. I remembered the years of feeling less than. I remembered the retirement dinner. I remembered the sound of the spoon tapping the glass. Clink, clink, clink. Yeah, Mike, I said. Tear it down. Dig it deep. We're building something better. The sound of the excavator bucket hitting the roof was loud. A sharp, sickening crunch. But to me, it sounded like music. Have you ever been the workhorse of your family while someone else got the glory? Have you ever had to walk away from something you built because the people in charge didn't respect you? Share your story in the comments. I read them all. Sometimes, loyalty is just a fancy word for exploitation. And sometimes, the only way to get what you're worth is to build your own table. If you believe that leadership is earned, not inherited, hit that like button and subscribe. #GoldenChild.